Hey guys, Mr. Happy here, and today we are going to be discussing Garuda Extreme. This fight requires an average item level of 65 to attempt, and can be accessed after defeating Titan Hard Mode by visiting Yurian J in the Waking Sands and accepting the quest Primal Force. At the end of this video, I have attached a walkthrough guide where I will speak through our kill so that you can better understand some of the mechanics. The extreme version of Garuda will give you a familiar feeling with your previous encounter with her, but don't let it fool you. The way you approach this fight is far different than how you approach the hard mode encounter with her. There are some similarities though. Garuda still uses some of the same attacks herself: Downburst, Wicked Wheel, Friction, and Slipstream. Tanks still need to dodge Slipstream by walking through her, but DPS need to be a lot more careful now with Wicked Wheel, her AoE attack. This attack now hits about a little harder than Mountain Buster at times, and can easily KO anyone around Garuda other than a tank if they are hit by accident. It only happens during select phases of the fight though, so you can avoid it by dealing with the fight mechanics first to disable it. Downburst does still hurt, and she will use it far more often. As for Friction, I'll discuss our locations for dealing with this bit of AoE damage for each phase of the fight. It hits for about 1500 to 2000 depending on stone skins and succors, but you should be able to heal through this pretty easily. Now, let's discuss this fight phase by phase. Garuda has a total of 3 phases, with the third phase consisting of 2 mini phases. First, let's discuss phase 1. During phase 1, Garuda will start the fight exactly the same as she started in hard mode. She will immediately begin using Downburst and Slipstream as soon as they are available to her. 30 seconds after engaging her, she will place a vortex around the outside of the arena, forcing everybody to be sure they are in the center, roughly between the 4 stone pillars. Additionally, she will jump into the air shortly after. Before returning to do Mistral's Song, she will do a new attack, Feather Rain, which drops a bunch of AoEs around where she jumped into the air. They are way too fast to avoid, so just do your best to not be in the same area as her when she jumped into the air. The initial damage will only hit you for about a few hundred to maybe a little bit over 1000, but it also leaves a powerful damage over time effect called Wind Burn, which can be applied multiple times to a single person if they are hit by Feather Rain multiple times. This dot will deal strong wind damage over time, and should anyone be hit, it can be Asuna'd off. To avoid Feather Rain, just don't stand anywhere near Garuda jumps after she does it. After doing Feather Rain, she will appear on the north side of the arena to perform Mistral Song in a cone, facing the south side of the room. In order to avoid this, you need to get behind the pillars. But when I mean get behind them, I mean make sure the pillar is right between you and her. Trying to simply hide on the south side of the pillar nearest her will definitely get you killed. So squeeze out some room on the side as you see us doing here. After returning to the battlefield, you will continue to deal with the Vortex and Garuda. Additionally, she will summon several Razor Plumes and a Satin Plume. Same as in hard mode, kill the Satin Plume before it explodes and sleeps everybody. Also, don't ignore any Razor Plumes. More than having a handful blow up definitely means at least the end of a stone pillar, and the AoE damage they deal is very significant now. A few of these blowing up on someone can easily kill them. She will repeat this process over and over again until she is brought to about 75%. So she will always jump, Feather Rain, Mistral Song, do Plumes with the Vortex around the outside of the arena during this first phase. Keep in mind that her location for Minstrel Song will change every time she is allowed to jump in this phase. It appears to follow a clockwise motion, meaning she will always go from north to east to south to west, depending on how long the phase lasts. I haven't spent much time in this phase, so should that pattern be any different, leave it in the comments below. I know that it definitely goes north then east, but I'm not so sure about after that. Additionally, in order to prevent Friction from doing damage to the pillars, it is best to have everyone stack in the center and simply heal through the Friction damage. Like I said, it's about 1500 to 2000, so a Medica 2 or a single Medica or even a single Cure 3 should be able to offset this healing. At 75%, Garuda will scream die before removing the Vortex and summoning Charada and Suparna. During the time either of them are alive, Garuda will have access to Wicked Wheel, which does significantly more damage in the extreme mode. Expect it to hit anywhere between 3 to 5k, and Charada and Suparna can both do it as well, meaning you do not want to have to DPS tanking either of them while they are alive. Initially, you will only see a single tether between Suparna and Garuda, which will grant Garuda a strong stone skin effect for both physical and magical damage. After several seconds, a second tether will appear between Charada and Suparna, and both of them will gain a stacking buff that decreases the damage that they receive. This buff is caused by Charada and Suparna being too close to one another, though its range is quite large. The closer they are, the more stacks they will generate, up to a maximum of 8. Even should they gain 8 stacks, however, separating them will lower it back down to 1, so don't think the fight is over just because they have 8 stacks. The distance required to only have 1 stack of this buff is basically the entire arena size. To counter this, have your off tank bring Charada to the opposite side while your main tank pulls Suparna and rotates cooldowns. Once Charada is dead, Suparna will be unable to obtain these stacks, so drag her out of range of Garuda to avoid your melee getting hit by Wicked Wheel and kill her fast. You're probably wondering why I am saying drag Charada and not Suparna. Well, remember that tether between Garuda and Suparna? Well, once during this phase, Garuda and Suparna will both take to the skies and perform Feather Rain. When they come back down, they will have switched places. So dragging Suparna away instead of Charada will force Garuda to spawn on the opposite side of the arena and begin attacking Suparna's highest enmity target. Each sister will mimic Garuda's moves, including Downburst, Wicked Wheel, and Slipstream. Additionally, each one will use Friction, although it works slightly differently in this case. Instead of automatically hitting a central target and dealing damage in a small AoE around them, it will select a target and place a red circle under them. Anyone hit by this friction will take several thousand damage, potentially killing them. It can also deal damage to the stone pillars, which you really want to keep alive as best as possible for Aerial Blast. So kill Charada, then Suparna, and then DPS Garuda as much as you can until she jumps in the air to perform Feather Rain. This signifies her final ascent before Aerial Blast. Should either Charada or Suparna be alive for this, it will instantly wipe your raid. Also, you don't need to hide behind the rocks to mitigate Aerial Blast damage. Aerial Blast will destroy all 4 stone pillars, and you have now entered Phase 3 of the encounter. This phase is broken up into 2 mini phases that will repeat back and forth until you defeat Garuda. The first mini phase will call the vortex to the outside of the arena again, while summoning a slew of Razor Plumes. New to the party is the Spiny Plume, which is the primary mechanic of the entire final phase. The Spiny Plume serves 2 major purposes to the party. The first is that it will place a stacking debuff on its primary target called Thermal Low. When it stacks up to 3, the target will cause Super Cyclone, exploding and dealing damage to almost the entire raid. You can outrange it, but it's really nearly impossible to do. Unless you are extremely overgeared for the fight, this explosion will most likely cause a wipe, especially should Garuda cast Friction on any weak players before or after Super Cyclone. To counter this, let it place 2 stacks on whichever target it's applying the debuff to until provoking it off that target. The Spiny Plume can sometimes go for the healers initially, but most of the time it will default to whoever had the highest enmity on Garuda. Provoking it alone and performing no actions against it should be sufficient to drag it off of the 2-stacked target. It's extremely weak, so performing any actions on it is not recommended. Should the Spiny Plume not go for Garuda's main tank here, have him provoke it off so that he can be the one to gain the 2 stacks during this phase. Additionally, when it dies, it will do a small AoE explosion around it for about 4k, but after that, it will spawn a sacred soil looking circle that gives you the buff Thermal High, greatly increasing your resistance to wind damage. This circle is necessary for surviving Garuda's Mistral Shriek and, more importantly, Aerial Blast, which we will see again later in this phase. So for the first mini phase, quickly kill all of the Razor Plumes and avoid killing the Spiny Plume. Be very careful about using any AoEs during this phase of the fight, like Shadow Flare, Flaming Arrow, Fire 2, or Wide Volley, and especially Holy, to prevent your group from prematurely destroying the Spiny Plume. If the Spiny Plume is separated from all the Razor Plumes, definitely feel free to throw out a few AoEs, especially the White Mage's Holy, as even after the nerf, it is still substantial damage for this part of the fight. It is likely in this first mini phase that the Spiny Plume will not be able to stack a single person up to 3 for Super Cyclone, but be wary immediately in the next mini phase as it can perform the 3rd stack when it returns if it goes for the same target. Just to be safe, I recommend doing a provoke swap for this part of the fight. After killing the Razor Plumes, DPS Garuda normally until she dumps in the air. Immediately destroy the Spiny Plume when this happens. Avoid the AoE blast that he does on death, as well as avoid Feather Rain. As soon as Thermal High is available, step inside of it to mitigate the damage from Mistral Shriek, and it will likely do just barely any damage, pretty close to 0 damage because of the shield. Now begins the final mini phase of the fight. She will then jump immediately again after Mistral Shriek, do another Feather Rain in the center of the arena, and then return to summon Charada, Suparna, and a Spiny Plume. Charada and Suparna will spawn in the middle of the arena, while the Spiny Plumes tend to spawn randomly along the outside. At this point, you will now have 80 seconds to kill Charada and Suparna before Garuda does Aerial Blast. If either of them are alive during this, it will wipe the raid. Now before we even discuss how to handle this phase, ensure that whichever tank has 0 stacks of the Super Cyclone debuff, Thermal Low, provokes the Plume to prevent it from attacking the other tank. While I said it normally goes for Garuda's main target, we have seen inconsistencies in this, so play it safe and get its attention. The reason the main tank held it in the first mini phase was so that the off tank could initially provoke it during the second phase and begin to generate stacks. We will discuss why we use this method a little bit later on in the guide. Additionally, this phase is a great deal longer, so expect the tanks to have to provoke it off one another at least once, potentially twice. This phase will finally bring back the placed vortexes on the ground from the final phase of the hard mode encounter, though they will not rotate as they did before. One will spawn at each cardinal direction, north, south, east, and west, as well as one in the very center of the arena, leaving just the 4 corners of the map open to stand safely for the most part. It is recommended that your main tank holds Garuda and Suparna in one corner, rotating defensive cooldowns while doing so, and your off tank pulls Charada to the opposite corner with any melee DPS to kill her. Have your healers and ranged DPS in either of the free corners left on the map. You can either split up the healers and ranged DPS to split up frictions more consistently, or all in one to dodge and heal as a group. Be sure to communicate stacks of Thermal Low during all of this, since during this phase you are going to have tank swaps at some point on the Spiny Plume. After Charada is dead is where you need to quickly have both of your tanks provoke. The main tank should provoke the Spiny Plume off of the off tank, as his 2 stacks should be gone by now. The off tank will also provoke Suparna off of the main tank and drag her away to be killed safely away from Garuda's Wicked Wheel. Making this transition is the hardest part of the fight, and once you've mastered this switch, this phase is just a DPS check. Mind you, if you haven't killed Charada by the time that a tank swap needs to happen, your off tank may need to go grab the Spiny Plume before you finish Charada. Keep in mind this will turn Charada, so definitely be careful with Slipstream in this case, and Downburst and Wicked Wheel. Once 80 seconds are up, Garuda will take to the skies again, immediately kill the Spiny Plume, and use Thermal High to reduce the damage from Aerial Blast. After this, just rinse and repeat until you can kill her. If she's a few percentages away from death, you should be able to use a Limit Break and kill her through her Stone Skin, even if Charada and Suparna are up. But I always recommend taking the less risky route with this one, as anything can go wrong at any given time, especially should your melee DPS get Wicked Wheeled during this time. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, favorite, subscribe, and share for more Final Fantasy XIV and Final Fantasy videos. Also, be sure to follow me on Facebook and Twitter for regular updates about when I'm posting videos as well as when I'm streaming. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitch, and the link for that is in the description below as well. You can definitely come by there where I stream Final Fantasy XIV and classic Final Fantasy titles. We'll be streaming some other games over the course of the next year, however. Now, I am going to include this clip at the end, and I am going to walk you through our victory really, really quick. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Until next time, take care. So as you can see, our main tank is pulling Garuda right here, right in between the pillars on the northwest and northeast sides of the room. Everybody else groups up in the middle, so that way we can, properly heal through friction damage. Of course, the melee have their own thing, there on the sides and behind, but all ranged and healers are chilling back here, pretty much. Now, we're going to do this for about 30 seconds, downbursts, slipstreams, frictions, nothing special. But right about here, she's going to summon a vortex around the outside, and then immediately jump in the air. So, this is the part where you want to dodge Feather Rain, and when I said in the video, definitely make sure that it's in between. We could be even more to the right, but you definitely just don't want to be on the south side of the pillar. You will get hit. Trust me, we've done it enough times. So here we go, Satin Plume and Razor Plumes. Nothing really special. This is Not that much different than the phase from the hard mode encounter where you have to deal with the Satin Plume. The major difference is that the 4 pillars are still up and you have to be wary of friction. You really don't want to get too much additional damage on the pillars, especially if you're not overgeared for the fight. If you're overgeared for the fight, you're going to push this phase extremely quickly, and the pillars are more than likely going to survive with plenty of HP left. So all I gotta say is, if you're not yet to that point where you can only do 1 set of Satin Plumes in this fight, definitely be ready to do a lot more healing, to do a lot more damage, and to have to dodge Mistral Song a second time. So here we go, we just finished phase 1, and this is pretty much, even though I said it's phase 2, it's really just the transition phase between phase 1 and phase 3. Mainly because you have a time limit. You have to kill Charada and Suparna quick enough so that way they don't one-shot your raid with Garuda with Aerial Blast. So as you can see here, we have Charada here. She's got 2 or 3 stacks. Can't really tell from the size of the video, just from the way that I'm looking at it. But where I'm standing realistically is where you would want to tank Charada, best case scenario. But as long as she has less, 2 or 3 stacks, if your gear is high enough, you should be able to do it. Again, if you're not severely overgeared for the fight, then you definitely want to make sure she only has 1 stack. This is very DPS intensive if you were to do it in the item level 65 area. Even to do it in the item level 70 to 80 area, it's definitely a very tight DPS check. It's very tightly tuned, and I very much enjoy the fight. So as you can see, we're killing Suparna here. I didn't get any of the red circle frictions, but you saw one sort of to my right, back right when Charada died and I was changing locations. Also, we're spreading out here for the regular frictions. There's really no point in stacking up in the middle at this point. I mean, we can spread out and there's nothing really to dodge. There's no vortexes, there's no red frictions, there's no other mechanic going on here other than the basic Garuda mechanic. So right after this slipstream is when she's going to jump in the air. Now, really easily, just run to the center after this. Because Garuda was on the side, the north side, the feather rain is going to happen in that area. So just by moving to the north side, you should be okay. Running to the center. You don't need Sacred Soil or anything here if you have enough pillars up, but if any of your pillars have taken substantial damage, if you're missing 1 or you're missing more than 1, definitely Sacred Soil, Sakor, and be ready to Cure 3 and Medica 2 your way through that one. So this is already phase 3 of the fight. As you can see, if you're overgeared for the fight, it goes extremely quickly, but this part of the phase is really about execution. You have to make sure you can consistently do both mini phases in phase 3 without messing up. A single mess up can easily wipe you here. So we weren't able to really get the Razor Plumes to group up so that we could holy them down, but right here, we're just going to single target them down before moving on to Garuda. So the Spiny Plume is on the off tank right now, but it's not really that big of a deal. Like I said, getting a 3rd stack in this phase isn't possible, at least the first time around. The second time you get to this mini phase, it's entirely possible for it to happen. But right here, we've never had a Super Cyclone go off in this first phase. I don't know if that's because of DPS. I don't know if it's because of the time. I think it's because of the time. This phase is not 80 seconds long like the next one is. So Garuda went up. We're going to kill the Spiny Plume. Feather Rain comes down. We avoid the 4k damage, and we get inside. Really simple. As you can see, Mistral Shriek does almost nothing to us. I mean, I saw somebody's health bar drop. I think all of our health bars dropped a little. And then you just move on with the fight. Next mini phase. So don't stand in the center there. Try to do your best not to stand in the center there after she goes up. There's no reason for you to be there at all. I know monks and dragoons, you're really going to be itching to keep Grease Lightning and Heavy Thrust up, but just move out and in. It's not going to help you get there any faster. It's not going to help her spawn any faster for you to get those buffs up and ensure that they stay up. So as you can see, we are in the southwest corner, while the off tank is in the southeast corner with the Spiny Plume. Yes, he provoked it and brought it over here. He didn't have 2 stacks when this phase actually began and when the Spiny Plume began to apply the stacks. Now this part's really awkward because the off tank has to provoke and ensure that they can get aggro on Suparna, but at the same time, you're going to have, you may have a Circle of Scorn or flashes going off. Try to avoid having the Circle of Scorn dot on Suparna when the warrior, or well, warrior in this case, it's the off tank, when the off tank comes over to get it, because Circle of Scorn will generate enough aggro for you to immediately come back to you. You just don't want any dots or anything on it from the main tank, and that includes a Fracture in case it's a warrior as your main tank, but Circle of Scorn as was our Paladin main tank, so that's what I'm using for reference. So we killed Suparna, and after that, we had a lot of quality time with Garuda right here. As long as the Spiny Plume is kept in check, you should be okay. You may need to do another tank swap just because this part of the phase is so long. Now, As you can see right here, we are going to let it, again, do that, and then we are going to walk inside. Now, Aerial Blast will still do a few thousand damage through this shield, but again, it's nothing too substantial. Medica 2 or Cure 3 is more than enough. Succor as well, greatly appreciated for that. Dropping a Sacred Soil, of course, always helps too, but in the end, it doesn't really do that much damage. And at this point, you're done with the fight. You just have to repeat that over and over again until you are able to actually take down Garuda. So it's more about consistency. Bringing a Bard to this fight for Mage's Ballad definitely helps. Not only because the White Mages and the Scholars are going to be using a lot of MP to try and get through the fight, to try and use their MP to keep the tanks up, but in case they're using Holy, they definitely run out of MP a little bit quicker. Again, it's a bigger concern if your group is not really overgeared for the fight. That purple circle in the middle, by the way, that is because of lethargy or lethargy, whatever you want to call it. Lethargy can be applied to Suparna or Charada. It can also be applied to the Satin Plume. Now that's very interesting because we don't do that in this video, but casting lethargy on the Spiny Plume, I think I called it a Satin Plume just there. Casting it on the Spiny Plume, won't deal any damage, and it makes it move extremely slow. And on top of that, it increases the cooldown of, what's the attack called? Thermal Low. So because it increases the cooldown for Thermal Low, it really makes the whole tank swapping thing extremely trivialized. It just makes the entire phase go a whole lot easier if you can lethargy the Spiny Plume. So definitely do that, and it'll definitely help you in terms of reducing the amount of stacks that you generate. So we're just going to kill Charada and Suparna here. We actually opt for using our level 3 limit break on Suparna instead of just going to kill Garuda. Like I said, we always go for the safe route on this one. There's no point in taking the risk of not killing Garuda with this right here. The Stone Skin, the first time we killed it, we used the tier 3 limit break through her Stone Skin, and it did kill her, but always take the safe route. It's always better to not tunnel vision, do damage on the boss, and just deal with the mechanics as they are coming out to you. Now, our off-tank uses what he likes to call the Tornado Express a lot in this fight, which means he gets hit by the tornadoes a lot when he's trying to do these tank swaps. He can easily get from one side of the arena to the next, and he thinks that it's a perfectly viable thing for a tank to do, just because it's not going to kill a tank. It's just simply not going to kill a tank. Now, as you can see there, we ate a Super Cyclone. Now, because of our gear, we were able to survive it, most of us at least. You don't want to eat a Super Cyclone. You really want to try and avoid it. A single friction can easily mess up the rest of the fight. But that's it, and hopefully you guys are well on your way to beating the first of the new Extreme Mode Primals. I was very impressed with the fight mechanics on this one. Because everybody always asks me what my drops were, we got a Vortex Ring of Aiming, which I then won. Anyway, guys, like I said, thanks for watching, and definitely tune in when next is Titan Extreme and Ifrit Extreme. See you guys there.